Welcome to Larry's Library, and welcome to a new Top 10, also known as Top 10 Tuesday, the first Tuesday of a new month. And here it's time for a new Top 10. This time I have a suggestion by one of my viewers, and I'm sorry, but I cannot remember which one right now. Should have made a note about that, but I didn't. But I will see if I can find it. If I can find the post where the guy where the person suggested this, I'll put it up on a graphic on the screen. But at any rate, what he or she suggested was my top 10 books for a desert island. Meaning, if you were restricted to 10 books, any 10 books from your collection, and that I think that's the criteria I'm going to use anyway, is it has to be something that is in my collection. Not like any book in the world, but the top 10, I have to pick 10 books from my existing collection to take with me to a desert island. And further details I have made up on my own here for my own restrictions will be that I'm going to be on this island for the foreseeable future, so the duration of my life, let's say, and the climate is unknown, so it's definitely not going to have climate control if I'm stranded on this deserted island because we don't have any sort of climate control, and we don't know what the temperature range is going to be here. I think certain types of books, certain formats, are going to be excluded from even, to me, to even be a consideration. So no single issues, no trade paperbacks. We're going to want a good, robust binding. We're going to want a sewn binding. I mean, I think all the hardcovers I own, and most hardcovers, period, are sewn binding, and many are sewn and glued. So even if the glue dries up, the stitching will maybe keep it together for multiple readings, hopefully. And the hardcover might afford it some protection that it wouldn't otherwise have. So that's my reasoning with that. I'm not going to have access to the internet, obviously, or any bookstores, so these books are going to have to count. I'm going to have to pick something, in my opinion, it should be something with great rereadability, something I can read over and over. It should probably be books on the thicker side, obviously. If I can only pick 10, they can be as large as they need to be, but only 10, then for me, I'm going to pick books that I've already read fully. So that will let out a lot of possibilities from this equation, because some of you probably know that have been following the channel for a while. You see my room tour, the room tour video I posted, a year and a half ago. I have quite a bit of unread books because I was buying at a greater rate than I was reading for some time. I think that ratio has got a little bit closer to parity now, but at one time I was buying at a lot more rapid rate than I was reading. And of course, you buy an omnibus, at least for me and most normal mortals, we can't read an omnibus just like that. You can't knock one of those out quickly, especially when it's collecting material from, the old days when you had many, many panels and a lot of text per page. So, interesting little side note here, a little rabbit hole I ended up going down when I was preparing for this video and for this top 10 is I thought, well, what's the title of this going to be? Top 10 books for a desert island. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, desert island, is that even the right word? Have I been saying this wrong most of my life? Because wouldn't it be deserted island? But that doesn't sound right. When I say desert island, it seems like it's desert island. So I got to looking that up, and I went down a little mini word rabbit hole. I love those. I don't know if you do, but I do. And it turns out that desert, the way they used it on Gilligan's Island, if you've ever seen that show, some of you maybe you're too young, but you might have seen its syndication. Hopefully that's still being watched because it was great fun. But on Gilligan's Island, they always said desert island. I mean, that's the way I remember it. Well, it turns out the usage of desert island, not meaning a desert, has nothing to do with, a desert. It's an archaic form of the word deserted. So both ways are correct, apparently. It's just to say desert island is a very archaic term, but it is, I guess, nowadays it's more said deserted island. But at any rate, we're talking a remote area where I'm just stuck there for the rest of my life, foreseeably, So yeah, just like on Gilligan's Island. Although they eventually made it off the island, and of course it killed the show. But And while I'm on this little tangent, I mean, I might as well get this out of the way. One would think in 2024 that this would still not be a thing, a question, but it's there. And I brought up Gilligan's Island, so the question's there. I might as well get it out of the way. And of course, the question is Ginger or Marianne? Come on. Of course, the answer is Marianne. Just had to get that out of the way. So that's done. Okay. Now, on with the top 10. So, and as I said, I'm only going to pick books that I have read before. If I've read it, then I already know that it's worth taking on the trip and it is rereadable and that I can enjoy reading it over and over and over, which is a real possibility if I'm stranded on this island with no access to my library, any bookstores, online or otherwise, then these picks need to count. So, without further ado, number 10 is Ultimate Spider-Man Omnibus by Brian Michael Bendis, Volume 1. This one, I've talked about this a lot in other videos. So, in fact, I think in my last top 10, I talked about this one a lot. I'll link that up if you haven't seen it. But this one, I was collecting singles at the time this came out, this run, and my whole family was reading it with me. I mean, my wife and Kristen, we were all reading that as it came out. So it has a lot of great memories for me, and it is a truly great run, and I think it would benefit from multiple reads easily. I mean, you got fantastic artwork throughout. This is a keeper for sure. So that's why Ultimate Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1 is number 10. Number 9 is Daredevil by Frank Miller, Omnibus. Number 8 is The Alias by Brian Michael Bendis, Omnibus. This is a great story, and I feel like I could read this over and over, and it would hold up. So that's why it makes the cut. Number 7 is the only gallery edition in the lineup, and it's The Warlock by Jim Starlin Gallery Edition. Now, most galleries are on the thinner side, but this one is, if I remember right, it's close to 300 pages. And it's just full of beautiful Jim Starlin art and some wild, crazy cosmic stories, and I just love that era. That is number 7. Number 6 is Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 2. Now, why Volume 2? Because number 5 is Volume 1 in the lineup. So, in this top 10, number 6 and number 5 are occupied by the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 1 and Volume 2. Now, this is the wonderful Chris Claremont, John Byrne run is contained in here, as well as a lot of stuff by Dave Cockrum and a few others. But the main thing here is this, for me, is the greatest era of X-Men. This was what I fell in love with, as a kid, really, and continued to read on up through adulthood. So this is the lineup for me: Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Terry Austin, Kitty Pryde, Wolverine. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that for me. As far as X-Men, this is my X-Men. So they had to be in this lineup. If I'm restricted to just 10 books, this is 2 of them. Number 4 isn't a comic book at all, but it's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's Lord of the Rings. Now, one way I get this to fit in with only taking up 1 slot is I have the big red beautiful edition. I've showed it in a video before. If you haven't seen my Lord of the Rings Hobbit Connection collection tour video, I'll link that up. You can check that out. But this is slipcased. It's a big hardcover. It's beautiful. So yeah, and it contains all 3 volumes of Lord of the Rings in 1 book. So that way it only takes up 1 slot. So that's the one I take with me. Number 3 is The Hobbit. And I've got a hardcover that I recently got for Christmas, and it is illustrated by Tolkien. Now, I have not read this exact edition yet, but I have read The Hobbit about 3 or 4 times, 4 times I think now. So yeah, I'm sure that I love The Hobbit, and so I figure why not use this to take this edition. I have to choose one. I have several paperbacks of The Hobbit. I have more than 1 hardcover now. But I figure take this one. I haven't read this one exactly yet, as far as I haven't seen all the Tolkien illustrations in it. And it seems like a nice volume, so why not? Number 2 and number 1 on this top 10 are occupied by another Volume 1, Volume 2 omnibus. But this time it's Moon Knight by Doug Minch and Bill Sienkiewicz. This is an amazing, amazing comic book experience. If you haven't read this run, you really should. You owe it to yourself as a comics fan to check it out. Phil Sienkiewicz's art is just astonishing. And I read these originally as a kid, and then I reread them as an adult when I collected all of the singles. This is before the Omnis were announced. And then finally, when the Omnis came out and I acquired them, I sold off most of the singles. I kept a few choice ones just as mementos for my single issue collection. But yeah, I sold most of that when I converted over to mostly Omnis. And I love this run. Like I said, I've read it twice now, and I feel like it would stand up to reading multiple times, no problem. So that is the top 10 books I would take to a desert island, or a deserted island, if you'd rather call it that. And if I was restricted to just reading 10 books for the rest of my life, this would probably be the 10 I would pick if I had to pick right now. Now, this could very well change, and it likely will in the future. So maybe I'll do this top 10 again in a couple of years, because I have a lot of books that I haven't read yet. So a lot of books were not included in the choices here. For example, I have the Sandman hardcovers, the oversized editions. You know, that might make it into this. I haven't read it yet, so I'm not going to say yes to that. Not willing to take that risk when I know these 10 books are awesome to me, and I could reread them over and over and over and be as happy as one can be stuck on a desert island. So that is my top 10. I hope you enjoyed that. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you next time.